So today I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got my start in business. Um, Making a video more or less to help those starting out with ways to market, advertise, get your start, whatever you want to call it. I started out very simple with just a pickup truck. I bought a new truck when I was working in municipal government many moons ago. Back in 2004, I bought a leftover. I got a song of a deal on it, and in 2007 it was hit. It was parked on the side of the road. It was hit by a driver that fell asleep or something and was totaled out. I repaired it, and it basically became a hillbilly flatbed. It had an old road plate laying around that I turned into a bed and drove it like that because I didn't have the money to replace it. The insurance money wasn't going to cover it, And it worked. It just got me from point A to point B out of necessity. I built it. Fast forward a few years, I changed jobs. I work in a different form of municipal government now. And I started doing welding for myself about 3.5, 4 years ago. And my business was very simple. I used that pickup truck. I had bought a welder, a Miller Legend AEAD LE200. Simple machine, great machine. They don't make them anymore, unfortunately. For $500, and I had it serviced. It cost me about $800 to get it running right. I got it serviced after my first few jobs. It wasn't quite running 100%. And I had some electrodes, some rods, added some toolboxes to the bed, modified the bed a few times, and I just did what I could with that for the better part of a year and a half. Then a customer one day was like, "Hey, I gotta sell this welding truck I have, or mechanics truck I have," and I was like, "Wow, interesting." I was like, probably out of my prices. What do you want for it? What are you looking to get for it? He's like, "I don't know, 20, 30,000." And I looked at the truck, and the truck was beautiful. The '99, it was older than the truck I was working out of, but it was a big truck. It came with a crane. It came with the compressor. I mean, it was perfect. It was exactly what I was looking for. The only problem was I didn't have the money. Well, I thought I didn't have the money. I figured out what I could scrape up, and we agreed on a number. Not quite 30, but it wasn't 20 either. And I did a little bit of bartering. I did some work for him to get the price down a little bit. And, I scraped what I could together and basically made it happen. Borrowed money from everywhere I had it stored and did what I had to do. And that was the first real truck of the business that I had. And that was a year and a half into it. I wasn't making a lot of money, but it made a big difference. I was wasting a lot of time. I was taking the night before. I'd, go down to the garage and, take everything off the truck and set it up for the job the next day because I was limited on storage space with the pickup, or the modified pickup. And, I would set jobs up, the night before, and I wasn't getting paid for that time. And I looked at that time, and it was a waste of my time because I wasn't getting compensated for it. It wasn't part of the job. And moving to the bigger truck helped me with that. Fast forward a couple more years, same guy has another truck. He needs some work done. He says, "Hey, if you do X, Y, and Z, I'll give you this truck. We'll work it out. You do the work for the value, we'll make it work." And I did that, and that was around the time I hired my apprentice, and it just worked out. And it's another truck, similar truck, no crane, no compressor, but a solid utility body that'll work. And I picked up a welder used from a buddy, Lincoln welder, good welder. I don't even know the series on it. And that's what the apprentice is using. And it's a solid little truck. It needs some love, it needs some paint, it needs a bunch of stuff, but for now we'll run it. My point in all this is that I have very humble beginnings. Didn't start out with, a wad of cash and make this happen. I started out with 2 nickels to rub together, used $500 and slowly pieced it together. I didn't have all the capabilities in the beginning. I couldn't do MIG, I couldn't do TIG, and little by little, I got into it. I found a company that would lease me equipment, and I financed or leased the equipment to be able to do TIG and MIG, and got a plasma cutter, and a few other things that went along with it. And it all kind of fell into place. But you don't have to do all that. You can start as simple with a welding machine and just doing the jobs that you can with that. It's frustrating at times, it's tough, but you don't need a lot to start in this business. You just got to be able to weld. You got to be able to look at the problem and fix it, and give the people a result that they're happy with. Joe Average customer, we'll call him, doesn't know much about welding. They know what they've seen on TV. They know that it's supposed to look a certain way. And, 90% of the time, that's what they're looking for. You have to be above and beyond that. You have to be able to give them a product that is both looks the way that they expect it to look, but will hold as well. Because you can make pretty welds. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to hold. I've seen welds fail in tests that look beautiful. It's about your penetration and heat settings and the materials you're working with and all that fun stuff. That's the part that's tough. That's the part that takes time. That's the part that takes the experience. But, it doesn't have to be crazy. Advertising is tough. Advertising was one of the areas that I struggled. And the best customers you can get are the customers you get by word of mouth. Hey, this guy knows what he's doing. He really is. He's a great welder. He does this, he does that. Or this lady, this young woman, they're great welders. And you kind of got to use that to your advantage. The problem with word of mouth is that it takes time to build that reputation. It takes time for that information to trickle to somebody that needs you. Sometimes you get lucky and it just happens to get to, somebody who has connections that have other sources that need welding. For me, that happened with a residential company where I did a job for them, and, they kind of grabbed me. My prices were higher than the competition. But we went above and beyond on the job, and they were so impressed that they spread word of mouth, and they represent, I think they said 8,400 high rises in the Northeast, and that turned into a source of work for me. And it was by having, pardon the expression, having my shit together on a job, and not necessarily being the lowest, but being able to get the job done and back on track, back on schedule, because it had stalled for several months before that, and being able to come up with the solutions and working with them, and being professional and addressing people appropriately, corresponding by email, having a drawn up quote explaining exactly what I was going to do, so that when you saw the price, or when they saw the price, they understood what they were paying for. They understood why the price was higher than the competition, because there were, in this particular case, we had to get special certifications. We had to go back to the manufacturer and get them to approve the technique, because they were calling for MIG welding, and it was a field job, and what they wanted to do, it was never going to work in the field. So we came up with a weld procedure specification for them, for us to use in the field, for them to approve, and they were ecstatic, because they're like, we never thought about this. And so all around, everybody won on the job. I won because it was it was a good job. It kept my apprentice and I working for 2 days, and they brought in an independent inspector to watch my work, and he went back to them and said, like, this guy's got it together. This guy knows what he's doing. That's what it comes down to, is that know the job you're going on. Don't half-ass it. Don't go to a job and be like, I'm the welder, what I say goes. Know what you're telling them is right. Know what you're telling them is accurate. Know that if they go to somebody, if they bring an independent inspector in that's going to know just as much as you, that they're glowing, giving you a glowing review of the job you're doing. In our particular case, the inspector, it was a structural weld, certified structural weld. The inspector went over to the rod oven, my portable rod oven, and wasn't expecting me on, and he goes, "Oh, I almost burned my hand on that." Because there's guys that go through the motion. They don't take the time to plug it in. I took the time. I had the rods in all night long, because if I was an inspector, that'd be the first thing I'm looking at. So it's being, how do I describe this? It's being the welder from the start of the job to the end of the job, from the moment you make first contact with your client until you complete the job. because it's, it's about the customer. Anybody can weld. Given time, anybody can weld. There are some amazing welders out there that are terrible business people because they don't, they're not the type to work with the customer, or to talk to the person, or to really sell the person. You have to be, in business for yourself. You have to be the salesman. You have to be the accounts. You got to be everything. You got to do it all. And that's the tough part. So it really comes with, you show up with a professional appearance. Are you going to be dirty at times? Yes. But, having a company t-shirt or sweatshirt, a hat, some business cards, all things that you can do on a relatively low budget. I got my first set of t-shirts for $200. I think I got 10 sweatshirts, 10 long sleeve t-shirts, and 20 regular short sleeve t-shirts for like $250. And that include the screen printing and everything. Where you are in the country, obviously it's going to change elsewhere, but something as simple as a t-shirt. And I know Jody from Welding Tips and Tricks and JD, they were talking about it, that you show up in a t-shirt with holes in it and stuff like that. If it's your company t-shirt and there's holes in it, it gives you a little bit more credibility than just showing up in some flannel shirt. If you get the fire resistive stuff, I spent money on patches. You can see it on my outerwear here. There's companies online that you can get patches made for $1.60, $2 a patch, and you can order as little as 25 or 50, and you can order up to thousands. I had a bunch of old outerwear from an old job, and these patches magically are just the size of what the old embroidery underneath is. So underneath here it says municipality of whoever, and the patch covers it. For me, it was free outerwear. It was a way to save money. And that's a big part of starting a business is, find ways to cut costs wherever you can. Not everybody's going to be able to go out and spend thousands of dollars in outerwear and even hundreds of dollars, but getting, one good fire resistive shirt and maybe investing in $150 in patches, you can go buy a name brand fire resistive shirt or jacket, or even your welding jacket, and take it to your local dry cleaners, or your wife can sew it on for you, your husband can sew it on for you, your mother, your father, whoever can sew, and you get the patches on there. It just makes you look, it gives you more of that professional appearance, and that's part of it too. You have to be able to walk the walk, talk the talk, and do the job. And that's looking professional from the start to the end. I know a contractor that, he and his son, when they go out to jobs, they have button-down shirts with the company logo embroidered on their shirts. They have, I think, 2 shirts between them, or they're 2 shirts each of these shirts, and they only wear them on the days that they're actually going to job doing quotes on jobs, just so that they can have that crisper, cleaner appearance. And that's part of it too. People have to have confidence in you from the moment that they see you. If you walk up like some schmuck, and your price is awesome, they may in the back of their mind be questioning if you can do the job. We live in a society where people judge you based on the way you look, so, that comes into play with my trucks. When I was driving the pickup truck, I looked like a podunk welder from the hills, and, my truck was not the most professional, so I had to overcompensate by making sure the job was done 1,000%. And that wasn't productive. Now I pull up in the new truck, which is lettered up, and it has advertising. It's a rolling billboard, because if I'm driving down the road, that works for me, because people see the truck, they see the name of the business on the side, they see my website on the side, they see the phone number on the side, they see a brief synopsis of what we do on the side. It's a rolling billboard. But pulling up in that truck also lends credibility to what I do. A, because I can afford to purchase a truck like that, even if I scraped every nickel I had together to get the truck to pull up with. But you pull up with a truck like that, they're like, wow, this guy knows what he's doing. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But I look the part. And then when I deliver on the job, then they know I know what I'm doing. And that's what it comes down to. When you do a job, do it to the best of your ability. Finish it through. Take the time. Bring a couple of rattle cans of paint to at least prime it, if not paint it. I always have black. I always have white. I always have primer on the truck, because that little step to keep it from getting rusty, unless they tell you specifically not to paint it, hit it with a coat of primer. They can paint it later. The primer will cover it up. It's that extra step. It's that attention to detail. It's doing the little things that will set you apart from your business. What we do as welders is not unique. It's how we get it done that becomes the calling card for our business. Doing the job right, doing the job with the attention to all the detail, and making sure that it's not messed up or comes out less than ideal. Are you gonna have jobs that are less than ideal? Absolutely. Are they gonna come out perfect? Not all the time. But when they don't, if you can point that out or be like, we had a problem here because of X, Y, and Z, we had to do this instead, or being able to, I don't want to say make an excuse, but to qualify why you changed or did something different than what was expected, it gives them the heads up, and you're not leaving it for them to find out after the fact. When something like that happens, I'll tell them, look, we did this. If it doesn't work out, let us know. We'll come back and we'll do it at cost, or we'll fix it at cost. This is the solution we came up with for now. This is the best that we can come up with, the materials on hand to get you back going. If this doesn't work, we can come up with a plan B, and we can work with you on price. I don't like doing that. Nobody likes doing that, but sometimes that's what you have to do when the job doesn't come out perfect. So to kind of recap real quick, start small. It doesn't need to be anything big. You don't need to go over the top. You can do it with a pickup truck, a welder, some electrodes, or some rod, or a suitcase welder. Whatever you have on hand, you can make it work. I've heard of guys using a generator and a regular box of a regular MIG welder, 110, 220 MIG welder. The possibilities are endless. You work with what you have. You make it work. I was fortunate after a year, and like I said, I bought some new equipment, but that was all because of a $500 welder, stick welder. And that's all I could do with it was stick welding. At some point I picked up a lot of equipment from a welder that was retiring. I split it with a buddy. He wanted like $3,000. I think we both paid $1,800 a piece because it was $3,600. He came down from, he was actually higher, and I think it was like $4,500 or $5,000. And we split the equipment up. I got a tombstone welder. I got a TIG lead that I could use with my stick welder, some gas line, and a bunch of other things, a hood, lots of small odds and ends. And we just split it up evenly, and that was another way that I got some equipment. I watch Craigslist. I look for deals all the time on used equipment because I can't afford new. I'm 3.5 years into it, and I can't afford to put to give my apprentice all brand new grinders. I can't do it. So I'll pick up used ones. I'll talk to other welders that I know, be like, hey man, you got any old equipment laying around, that you're looking to get rid of? Well, what are you looking for? And it turns into a conversation, and then they give you a call down the line, hey man, I'm getting rid of X, Y, and Z, and I'll let it go for this. And you just, you got to kind of do your homework and make sure that you're not getting taken. But, used equipment, 50 cents on the dollar, 60 cents on the dollar for a top name brand, it's worth it. Maybe you get a couple months out of it, but if you get 2 or 3 jobs out of it and you're paying 50 cents on the dollar, it got you through until you can afford something more. As far as advertising goes, this is gonna be a long video. So when it comes to advertising, that's a tricky area. So I spoke about word of mouth and being the job from get-go. You have Craigslist, you have all these companies out there that offer services to do this, and Craigslist is free. The quality leads I've gotten from that have not always been the best, but it's gotten me work. Typically people that I find on Craigslist they're not really flush with cash. They're not really in a place where they can afford to pay top dollar. They're usually looking for a deal. Facebook has a marketplace now. I've done advertising on there, and that was the same thing. Everybody was looking for a deal on there. Everybody was looking for cut rate work. And that's tough. That's tough for me as a businessman because I have literally millions of dollars in insurance coverage, and that costs me thousands of dollars a year to maintain. So that's part of it, that makes it tough for me to compete with that. So that sets my rate at a certain place. So what that means is I have a break-even point. There's a number that I constantly check, usually once a quarter, and I see where my expenses are and what my insurance costs me, and based on the number of days I'm working, how much that averages out to be. And right now it's somewhere $65 to $75 an hour, and I can't work for less than that, otherwise I'm losing money. For me, my apprentice, that number is lower. For my apprentice, that number is somewhere in the $40 to $45 an hour range. But there's numbers I have to hit for it to be financially viable. You're going to be competing with people out there that don't have insurance. And my best advice is, if you are welding and fabricating and you're working on people's stuff, absolutely get yourself a general liability policy. Hands down. I have some extra riders. I have my tools insured because I can't afford to take a hit on my tools getting stolen or damaged or something happens to them. I have them additionally insured. My welders are all insured because they're leased and they have to be. That's a separate policy. My commercial auto I have to carry. And working for customers that quite honestly have the money to pay, they typically want to see that general liability. They usually want a $2 million aggregate. $1 million per occurrence. There's all kinds of mumbo jumbo, and there's companies out there that want $5 million riders, and that's big bucks, that's big money. So you got to make sure that the work they're giving you is worthwhile. But this is on the customers that don't have that money. There are guys out there that are gonna lowball you. There's guys out there that literally just have a welder and they'll weld it for $250 cash, and they'll spend 2 or 3 hours and be done with it and walk away, and that's great, but I want consistent business. I want business that I can count on. I want business that's going to constantly be back. And the problem with doing that at just $250 is that that's a lot of word of mouth. You need to know a lot of people and have that cash work always coming in. And you're not going to be able to get into that business work. You're not going to be able to get into the companies that want that insurance, and they're the ones that are reliable. There's I have a lighting company calling me to raise some brass, and that was a solid day. And it's a production piece that they're going to call me on a certain interval, and more than likely have me come back and continue to do this work for them. The cell company, the same thing. You can't do work for real companies doing real construction jobs with plans and things of that nature, if you don't have the insurance. Do you need to get it right away? No, I made it more than a year without it. But I was doing, patch this hole, was doing it for cash, and was, the very basic beginnings. As soon as I got into working on people's cars or trucks or equipment, I made sure I had that insurance. And it was a stretch. It was most of what I was making. But I wanted to be covered, God forbid something happened. So you have to think about that. Back to advertising sites, I used, Yelp was one of the companies that I used, and it was an awful experience for me. They charged me a ridiculous amount of money to advertise, and told me I had all these leads, and I got no phone calls out of it. And that was a huge risk. I'm trying Home Advisor now, and it seems to be the same thing. 10 or 15 leads, and one of them's actually turned into a customer, and they haven't called me to do the job yet, and it's been more than a month. So it's out there. Google AdWords is good. You have to have a pretty good strategy. You're going to get lots of phone calls from people. And then there's, websites like Find RFP and all these out there for finding requests for proposals. And if you ask me, honestly, they're a waste of money. They don't really match up. It seems like you're going to find a lot of work through them, but you're not. You're looking for 1 or 2 leads for whatever the cost of those sites are. And in the end, it's not worth it. But business cards, putting business cards out, putting ads on Craigslist, if you're getting your start, wherever you can find the work, whatever you can do to get that work to come in is what you need to do. Craigslist is good. I like that. That was a pretty good, easy, free source of work. I ended up paying for AdWords, and you can put that on a budget. It doesn't have to be a lot. Having a website, having something that people can search for and say where there's a welder. There's literally dozens of places to go out there that cost money. But you do whatever you can. You beat feet, you go out, meet customers. Hey, listen, I'm a welder. You know, and that's where that relationship starts. You know, you really gotta spend the time and go out and meet customers, because that's the best way to bring them in, is to go out there and physically take the time to go knock on doors. Don't make phone calls. Phone calls are good. People will promise you everything on the phone. If you're making a phone call, do it to a place where you need to call ahead to meet the right person, and then go there and meet them in person and put the legwork in, put the time in to build that relationship, shake hands, look them in the eye, and saying, this is what I can do for you. You know, and it's a struggle. It's a constant struggle to find work. You know, I work with a lot of landscapers, you know, and it's the same story. Landscapers, excavators, construction companies, if they're big, they have their own welder. If they're small, they don't have the money to really constantly support welding, that needs welding. But, you know, you get one company in, you know, around here, there's yards. They have yards of, you know, be 15 landscapers in a yard, or a landscaper, an excavator. You get in that one yard and somebody sees you welding, before you know it, there's 5 people there that need something. And it's really getting exposure to different places and people to meet you. And you build a reputation for being reliable and being able to be there. People call you, make sure you show up. You know, don't be a flake. Don't be, I'll be there tomorrow. You know, if you're running late the next day and you're not going to be there at 9 a.m., you said you're going to be there at 9 a.m., call them. Hey, man, I'm running behind. I'll be there at this time. And give them a time that you can be there for. You know, that's the best way to guarantee that you're going to get the work. And that's about it. Thanks for watching. I'll try and follow up with anything I missed. But feel free to ask questions below in the comments. And cheers.